welcome to this inaugural edition of the State of Tech in Africa. So basically, the State of Tech in Africa is TechCabal's attempt to cover more ecosystems outside the popular hubs, Lagos, Nairobi, South Africa, Johannesburg, and just reach to more places, get to know the players in this ecosystem, the state of the innovation in these places. This edition obviously is the State of Tech in Uganda, and today we have Malinzi Kisahda. Malinzi is the country manager for AWA. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay, yes. And AWA is making mass transit accessible by providing infrastructure to transporters and stakeholders. Prior to AWA, Malinzi co-founded Digest Africa. I know Digest Africa, a data and insights platform for VCs and startups across Africa. And he was CEO for 3 years. Am I correct, Malinzi?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. So anything you want to add to this introduction, anything you quickly want to say to our audiences that I missed out in my introduction?
Yeah, what I would just stress is that if you want to know more about EWA, just go to our website. So the word EWA is EYWA. So the website is ewamiles.com. Just visit that. Then, of course, the same with Digest Africa. If you want to know more about Digest Africa, you go to digestafrica.com. Right now, I'm based in Kampala, for those that might want to know. And I welcome everyone who has never been to Kampala. It's lovely weather, lovely people. Either you're an investor, you're trying to expand to the market, and then you can also just reach out to me as an individual.
Okay, great. So yes, I can imagine Kampala is a great city. I've heard a lot of stories about the weather, about the people. Yeah. I've lived in East Africa for a bit, so yes, great place. So it's 11, and we're just going to dive right into it. I think Kampala is really interesting. I think Uganda is a very interesting place.
Yeah.
But for the sake of discovery, which is like mostly what we're trying to do here today, what are some of the biggest tech trends in Uganda? What are some of the things that you think are obvious that the media is not covering, that people are not talking about? Tech trends generally, innovations.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing for me in this market is around logistics. It's really it's ignored, perhaps because it serves a secondary role to other core sectors like e-commerce and payments. But if you look at most people that are trying to get into this space, it's one of the things that I think is powering so much. Most companies are trying to get into the space and of e-commerce and payments that are supposed to get products to people. And they're finding that actually, if you are able to build a system that can do a product at a fraction of a delivery cost that others are doing, and of course also deliver that product in a fraction of the time that others are doing, but then also, more importantly, deliver it to the place where you're supposed to deliver it.
Yeah.
It's really a trend that is going on. People are trying to compete. Others are trying to build these solutions in-house, but others are trying to outsource them. For example, right now I use Jumia and SafeBorder. I'm sure you're familiar with Jumia and SafeBorder.
Yes, I am.
For my deliveries, and the reason is because they've been able to invest in that infrastructure over time. But even them at that level, they had ignored it as sort of not their core service as companies. And I think they are just realizing it right now that if you want really to edge out other people in this space, the money you're spending on delivering products, because if you're going to deliver a product the wrong location, then you're incurring a cost in that area.
Yes.
If you're going to deliver a product 3 days later and then I'm not around when you're delivering it, then you're going to have to incur double cost in that area. Definitely. So I feel like, that's one significant area. And actually it became so critical during this crisis because we had a lockdown where we are not supposed to move, so you can only order either food, you can order essentials home and all that. So now you're having a product that is delivering other products and the margins are not making sense when it comes to the cost of delivery. Then I don't think one was going to last that. But then the other particular trend that I think for me is exciting is that of small businesses that are trying to get online, to sell online. Either for the very first time, or they are trying to do that more efficiently than the way they've been doing it.
Yeah.
Because online for long has been treated as, an either, it's like a by the way kind of arrangement.
Okay.
People actually tell you, come to our shop, and we sort out this. But then small businesses, and by small I mean those that are employing less than 10 people, or just an individual who is trying to sell products to others, they found this very, very essential, and they were looking for tools. For example, buying products, you go to Instagram, and when you're on Instagram, you're looking, let's say you're looking for AirPods, right?
Okay.
And guy sells AirPods, and then you're searching, either comparing prices or comparing whatever it is that you're looking for. And the experience is very horrible, because you're not getting, there's no way for you to know who's the best seller.
Okay.
Or maybe if I might use a more glaring example, is, let's say if I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Okay.
There are many things you're looking at in that area. So there is the trend of some companies that are trying to come into this space where they try to build solutions that consolidate that entire value chain.
Okay.
Saying that if you're a small business, you can sell to other businesses in a way that the footprint for accountability for the business, or you can even sell to consumers in a way that ensure they've taken care of your deliveries, and then they've taken care of your payments, and they are giving you a way to communicate that's a little bit more consolidated. Like, for example, right now, if you're ordering something from a small business on Instagram, you might end up closing the sale on WhatsApp. They'll call you, and they'll ask for where you are, and then they don't have predefined delivery fees, so you can also have to negotiate the fees with the border person. So again, I would want to have most of these consolidated. And then, so there is a particular company in that area, it's called Sente, where they bring these small businesses online. And I think it's an interesting space that people are not covering properly. How do you get these small businesses, to sell to consumers and businesses in a way that is streamlined? The other trend that I think I can give a hint on is around telemedicine.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there is a friend of mine who has been in this space. He's actually a doctor. He has been in this space for close to now, I think, 5 to 7 years.
Interesting.
His company is called Rocket Health, for those that might be interested. And he had a challenge engaging insurance companies, engaging corporates, engaging government agencies to come on board and embrace this. And it has become so evident to these organizations that they need to deliver services beyond the traditional way of doing it. You need to deliver services. For example, if you want to do a lab test for HIV, you don't need to go and wait at a clinic. And if you want to check, for example, what we've been having right now is that if I'm suffering from something else, I don't need to go to a clinic where I might get COVID-19, right? I need the clinic to come to me, either it's a lab or just buying pharmaceutical products. I mean, I can order these online and they come to me. So what they've done is really, really interesting, because the founder was sharing, I think, a few weeks ago that they were close to, hopefully I'm quoting the right figure, but he was mentioning that they were over 2,000% growth rate.
Interesting. Interesting.
So I think that's another trend. Of course, there are a couple of others, but on my from my experience, of course, using the products, as well as the person who is interested in technology, I feel like some of these trends were hard. It was hard to bring small businesses online. It was hard to get companies to appreciate that you want to deliver products at a cost that is really, really affordable to the consumer or the business, and then also convincing government agencies and corporates and insurance companies and hospitals that you want to deliver your services in a way that doesn't need people to come to your facility. That's why I think I've singled them out.
Okay, so I want to ask you one question, and it's around e-commerce and logistics, right? For the longest time, e-commerce has been like a fad in Africa. I mean, it's a necessity, but it has become something of a fad. And there is the logistics conversation, logistics has become a direct effect of the penetration of e-commerce. How do you see the relationship between both in Uganda? How do e-commerce and logistics players interface for the market?
I think time has come for them to be divorced.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I'm suggesting that because if you're going to build out an e-commerce arm, it's a hard job for you to do, And if you're going to do that again with logistics, it's a harder job to do. So I feel like we are getting to a point whereby you don't need to build both of them, because there are people who are interested in just building for you an e-commerce, a logistics channel that is really, really well streamlined to do things for you at a fraction of the cost. I'll give an example of Safe Border right now. If you're a small business that's looking to sell products, Safe Border is trying to make sure that, because Safe Border delivers me to my location almost every day, they are going to know where I stay. So they're going to know all the nitty-gritties of how people move in Kampala. They are going to know which location is, because we don't have really that fully fledged address system, and even the road infrastructure is a little bit inadequate. So they've really, really figured out how to maneuver that. So if you're going to now say, you know what, I'm in the business of selling books, right? I'm a bookshop.
Yeah.
Do I need to also do my own logistics? No, I think I'll just open up a shop on Safe Border, right? And I sell with Safe Border. It's something I think when it comes to, because now I'm looking at it, there's that scale of a small business, but then there's a scale of a bigger e-commerce player like Jumia, right? So Jumia, you might have a need that really, really goes beyond what a small business has. You can afford now to do something on your own. So if you're looking at the scale of Jumia, I feel like you can still maintain it in-house for some things that you think maybe you won't have control over. But even then, what we've seen in this market is they've outsourced some of their elements to DHL. They've done that with the postal office here, where they've been able to partner on a couple of things. They've done it with there is this delivery company from UAE that they're working with. I think I'm forgetting the name, but they've also been able to outsource a certain amount of that either is too bulky for them to handle, or is well streamlined for an outsider to handle. But I feel like overall we are going to have it divorced in the long run. I don't think it's really, really worthy of someone building a logistics business and then also building an e-commerce business.
Okay, I totally agree with you on this count. I think both should be independent of themselves, because, of course, there is an urgent need for logistics besides e-commerce, right? Yeah. So in as much as they complement, logistics is a thing that exists by itself. Yeah. But still, building on the relationship between both, do you think there is enough use case in Uganda now there's enough e-commerce use case for logistics? So do you think an e-commerce is currently operating at an optimal level to support the logistics industry?
I don't think so. But okay. Now, when you're looking at e-commerce, because I think we're looking at the potential for e-commerce.
Okay.
So there are two ways. If you're looking at those that are already just like right now doing e-commerce, I think it's not. But if you're looking at the potential for e-commerce, then okay. I feel like it makes the justification. For example, if you're looking at My Life, right? There are products I use, and some of them I have to go to the shop to get access to those services, to those products, right? And some of these I can get them via e-commerce, but usually the challenge is either I cannot wait for the time to go to the e-commerce shop, for the product to be delivered to me by the logistics firm. So I have to go there. Really, it's really urgent for me. Or the cost is really, really too high that I would rather drive there or take a boda and get it myself. So if we get to the pretty commerce where I think you have enough small businesses that are coming online to sell to people, in that if I want a book from a bookshop, I just need to go to this and then someone delivers to me. And then if a person who is doing logistics in that case is having enough people who are doing this, then to them they can afford to have, because if you're looking at it right now, if you have, let's say, 10,000 drivers, right, that are there on standby, they are competing for jobs. Do you have enough jobs for all of them? If you don't have them, then they're going to go for the alternative, which is, maybe they will drive and then either do something else, or if they have to drive, they're going to do so at a very, very high cost, for you. So what Jumia, okay, I'll give an example of Jumia. If let's say they're going to deliver something to me, they will take like 3 days to deliver that thing. And usually they are waiting for so much demand on that particular route, in order for them to bring the product. But if they had essentially enough demand, that is coming in for that particular route means that I can get my product in an hour or two. So if I order, let's say, a fridge today, I can get it. If I ordered, let's say, a smartphone today, I can get it, in the next few hours. Because most of these products are there in the warehouse. It's not like they are going to assemble them. So I think if you look at the potential and someone is building for that potential, and the work is, how am I going to convince more businesses to come online, sell online, but they don't have to worry about this. Because like I explained earlier on, if a small business is selling right now, what they're going to do is they're going to ask for my number and they give it to the boda person, right? And for those who are not familiar with the term boda, it's Okada or motorbike.
Yeah, right.
So they'll give it to motorbike delivery agent, and the guy will call me and we negotiate a separate delivery fee. And usually it's very exorbitant. So if someone can come in and say, whenever you have products to deliver, we are here, we are your delivery agent. And there are so many of these. I feel like it makes the economic sense.
I think this is an interesting model where you negotiate a separate delivery fee. But you know what? We're going to get back to logistics and e-commerce in a bit. I think that's a conversation we can have for the longest time. So yesterday when we talked, we talked a bit about the key differences, between ecosystems in Africa. We highlighted it a bit, but just generally, what do you think? Now, there's a lot of similarities between ecosystems across Africa, a ton of them, But what do you think are the key differences between, some ecosystems across Africa and, like in your case, Uganda?
I think the difference is not really horizontal in the sense, it's more like vertical in that I'll look at it in the level of maturity. That's for me the key differentiator, but it's really not like stark difference in that maybe these guys are building a solution for product X, we're building for product Y. Usually we are building for the same products, sorry, for the same problems. So you're not building for problem X and me, I'm building for problem Y. We are building for the same problems, but we are different either scale or level of maturity. For example, when you look at South Africa, they are still building payments solutions for small businesses, but usually Yoko is building something at a different stage that is doing that in Kampala. You understand? So for me, it's less horizontal and it's more vertical. It's just at what stage are you doing this? If someone is raising money and they're raising it in Lagos, usually they are looking at a check of $20 million. And here maybe someone is looking at $10 million, $1 million or less. And it's because if I'm in Lagos, I'm going to build this and perhaps my market is a little bit bigger. And because also there are other entrepreneurs before me that have showed a track record of doing this. So it's easier for me to have a conversation with an investor, either in Europe, in China, in the US and all that, compared to in this market. Yeah.
So what you're saying in essence is that the difference is the scale of the problem on ground.
Yeah, it's the scale of problem or the maturity in terms of technology and those that are executing on that technology.
Great. Okay, so you've talked a lot about building and what do you think people should keep in mind? People building startups, building small businesses, innovation. What do you think some of the most important infrastructure has to be on ground? Like, what should people be building in Uganda?
I think usually, because this is going to sound like I'm contradicting myself.
Okay.
From what I've just said. And this is usually the standard answer, but I would recommend that you just come to Kampala and stay here for a couple of weeks, a couple of months. And one of the things that you're going to look at is usually culturally we are a little bit more laid back. So if you're going to come with an aggressive approach, and people will just say yes to something and perhaps they don't mean it. So because they don't want to offend you sometimes.
Right.
So they'll just say yes and they don't really mean it. So you want to test out early on, are people willing to pay for this? Rather than going on a survey and ask people, do you want this? And they'll say yes.
So market research.
Yeah, but I feel like market research that is really not vanity market research, like metric-driven market research of saying, I'm going to first ask these people if they can buy this and build something maybe very simple and try to sell it to them.
Like an MVP of sorts.
Yeah, because some people, I feel like some markets, people will tell you straight up to your face if they don't want something. Here, people find it hard to tell you that, You can sit down with someone for an hour and they seem interested in your product and usually they are not interested in it. Then also the other one, which is not really technology related, is around the subtlety in our regulation.
Okay.
I feel like the authorities are very, very volatile. For example, during this crisis, the Kampala Capital City Authority, now this is the governing body for the capital city, just came up with something which was a little bit knee-jerk, a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction of saying that they are going to gazette a border free zone. So, and what they did was gazette almost the entire central business district, which is where most of the business takes place and where the most traffic jam is, and people use border speed traffic jam. So it means that if you had built something around this, regulation would be one of the things that you would really have had to watch out. And there's, I think recently the Traffic and Safety Act that was passed by the government. And in the pipeline, there is also the National Payment Systems Bill. And most of these things, you would have to really be on the lookout, because they don't really communicate this on a national scale or international scale of letting you know that there is this that's going to take place. Some of them are just passed, and you find out when someone is just complaining about it afterwards. So if you're going to build, I feel like it pays off to start off by trying to engage the authorities in a way that will be informed about what might happen later on, especially if you're in an industry like finance, you know, which is really, really heavily regulated, and then also transportation, which is heavily regulated, or if these things affect your industry.
Now, I mean, you've jumped right into that part of the interview that we're going to have. Regulations in Africa are, I mean, they're the elephant in the room. They're the biggest things. They're very stifling. We all have different opinions about them. The government is trying to help, does not understand. Okay, first of all, I'm going to ask you the first leg of this question. Like, by how much do you think that government regulations and policies affect growth of startups and innovations in Uganda?
I mean, we can start off this from internationally, Okay. So right now, you're looking at a case of TikTok, right? And WeChat. So government, but now the challenges here are different, because government regulations in other markets don't kill you at the early stage. They maybe curtail you your growth at a certain level or your profitability. Right. Now here, what we have is regulations are not starting up friendly, Okay. When you're big, usually you can negotiate. Of course, you might have some hurdles, but because you have this leverage, you can usually go up and push back. But now, if you're starting up, you don't even have that leverage, and they don't put up the environment. And the other challenge is, even when they say that they're going to, they are very easier to enforce something that is negative than something that is positive, because usually what is negative is bringing money into their pockets as a government, and what is positive is supposed to require them to invest in this. So you're going to find that if the government says we should set up, let's say, a fund, they are going to say we are going to set it up, but it won't benefit the right kind of entrepreneurs, or it won't really come in the way you expect it to come. They won't deploy the money the way that you expect them to deploy it.
So some form of favoritism or the other.
You understand? So that's really the challenge. It's not starting up friendly. I mean, we can go deeper into so many aspects. Like I was explaining that small businesses are trying to come online to sell, right? Yeah. And one of the channels that they're actually using is social media. And for those that are listening in, perhaps you know that we have a social media tax in the country, which was put in place, I think, in 2018 or 2017. I think it's 2018. And what it essentially is, it mandates me to have to pay. And actually right now, I pay almost every month, before I access social media. Now, most people that are selling as small businesses, as you might know, it's a small business. You know? And if you're going to require their customers to have to pay to access their products, then you're cutting them out. But this small business, if you had just said there's no social media, but let's focus on getting, let's say, you're looking at VAT that is charged on the products that they are selling. You're looking at, they are going to get licenses before they can start selling. So how do you come up with a law that takes money at the end of the spectrum, not at the start of the spectrum, which is what we are doing here. So all these things, if I'm going to start a small business, now my total addressable market perhaps is reduced because of that. So it's really, some of these things I feel like we could think about them in a better way as a nation. But of course, this is not in isolation. Uganda is in the company of so many other African countries.
On that note, I have a thesis. Sorry to cut you there. I have a thesis, and it's like, so this is a thesis that I don't know by how much I believe in, but I think the issue of government regulation, this draconian policies and whatnot, are not solely an African problem. Like you just mentioned, TikTok, like all over the world, innovation is moving faster than authorities and the government can keep up with. And my thesis, again, I have to put a disclaimer. I don't know by how much I agree in my own thesis. My thesis is that the governments across Africa do not, of course, fully understand, technology and innovation, and most of the laws they make are reactionary. There needs to be more engagement with the government, between stakeholders and the government. Now, my thesis is that there is not enough of that happening. So what you have in, say, tech and startup is people just come out and build stuff, build stuff. And it's like, oh, build it, and, the government will come around. We'll figure out a way around regulation, which is honestly how innovation works. But what do you think of, the relationship between policymakers and the government in Uganda? And how do you think this can be better?
I don't think I understand the question. You said the relationship between the policymakers, because usually government is the policymaker.
Yeah, of course. I mean, policymakers, government parastatals all over, like what do you think the relationship between innovators and the tech ecosystem is, and how do you think these interactions can be better to help the government, understand what it is you're trying to do?
Yeah, I think I would start from the ideal case, right?
Okay.
As an entrepreneur, I would want to have sort of an arrangement that is two-way, that fosters an understanding of what are we trying to do and how can it help, the country, how can it help the continent, and then also the government says, what are we trying to do, how can it help you as an entrepreneur, right? Because rarely it is that entrepreneurs are doing anything that is trying to harm the country. It's rare. We are all by design are supposed to build problem-solving, products. That's it for entrepreneurs. So that's for me my ideal case. Now, is it the case that is happening right now? No. And for me, it stems from the fact that priorities are not aligned. Ideally, what we want our politicians to be, or policymakers to be, is people that want to advance the needs of their citizens. The ones that are being led. But now, I doubt that's usually the case, and that's why you have cases of corruption. That's why you have cases of embezzlement. That's why you have cases like all these things that ideally shouldn't be happening. And this is really not just limited to the continent, but globally. You're having countries where a policy should be this way, and then it's that way, but not because it's going to benefit the country, but because it's going to benefit a few people. So if we can really align, and each party is geared towards solving a problem, but that problem is, a problem that is going to benefit both parties, I think there shouldn't be a problem in the end. It should be easier for us to hear out each other and say, you know what, we are regulating this industry, for example, payments, because ideally you might get a court fine because people have failed to comply, or people are financing terrorism. So that's why this is coming into place. And if you can communicate that way, I don't think there should be really an issue.
Okay, so proactively now, how do you think this engagement should happen? Because it's obviously not been happening or not been happening enough so far. For Uganda, how do you think you can engage the government, regulators? What do you think are some of the hindrances, and how do you think this can happen?
What I'm proposing is, I think one of the ways this could be done, but governments, because we have had governments that take a proactive approach, like let's say Israel, they will say, we want to develop this sector. Like Singapore, they will say we want to develop this sector, and they'll say this is for example the vision for the next 20 years, vision for the next 10 years. For us here, we don't have that luxury. So I'm going to go with the realistic case, which is it's now upon us as entrepreneurs to become up the proactive approach. How do we come together and however painstaking it might be, start to educate our policymakers? We have associations like AfriLabs And I'm sure at a local level, we have associations that bring together people in technology or in venture capital or in startups together. So we can start at that level and say, you know what, maybe there's a small membership, and this membership, part of it is going towards lobbying, with authorities. In Uganda, there is an example of an association which is also part of the continental umbrella. It's called FITSPA. It brings together financial technology entrepreneurs and enterprises. And I think they're doing a good job with this, because they've been engaging the central bank, which is Bank of Uganda, on certain issues. And then a friend of mine who works with a law firm here, it's called Otis Africa. He was telling me that they were engaging the government on that bill that I was talking about, the National Payment Systems Bill. So I look at that as a way of knowing that if we try to bury our heads in the sand and the authorities check the lead, they might lead us to nowhere, or in a danger of right? Yeah. So we should take it up ourselves to do that.
Okay. Now we get to the point now where I challenge my own thesis. I told you originally that I don't know how much I believe in my own thesis. I put it forward and I asked you a question. Now, this is the challenging part. Do you think that most of this, censoring happening is because the ecosystem is truly not engaging enough with the government in Uganda? Do you think this is the case?
I mean, I cannot say it is 100%, but based off what I know, and the time I live in Uganda, I wouldn't say it's not significant. It's really not significant. To me, I think it is because you have those that are in positions of leadership having really different agendas, from those that entrepreneurs hold. And taking it back to what I've said, there is no entrepreneur. I mean, there are those, I could say, exceptions that come in and like they dupe or they con their customers, but few entrepreneurs build companies. Mostly entrepreneurs just want either to make a living, which is a lifestyle business, or to build to solve a problem on a very grand scale. And in the end of doing that, you're employing others, you're paying taxes, and you're attracting either more capital into your country. Because I can imagine if a company is registered in Uganda or in Nigeria and it's raising money, this is foreign exchange that is coming to the country. Right. So always by default, we are aligned with the national interests. So I would like to think that it's the other party that doesn't really have priorities that are aligned. Okay, that's fair. So for the people listening in, this conversation with Malinzi, I mentioned yesterday, can go on throughout for the rest of this day. Like, there's a ton of stuff to talk about, but I also like to see some of your questions for Malinzi. So please, if you have any questions, please type them in the comment section, and Malinzi is going to answer them definitely. Again, I don't regret the amount of time we spent talking about regulations, because I mean, I feel like they are some of the biggest challenges that startups in Africa have. They're some of the biggest challenges, because like, you're trying to do new things, you're worried about existing laws, you're worried about, paying and whatnot. There is that. But apart from government regulations and these draconian policies that we talk about, what other challenges do startups and the innovation tech ecosystem in Uganda face? The thing with building startups, usually the problems are the same. It's just the scale that, like, for example, for us here, if you're trying to raise money right now, it's the same challenge as someone who's in Lagos. The only difference is that if I'm trying to raise $1 million in Lagos, there's a track record of someone doing that, and that has perhaps attracted interest from elsewhere. Here you have to, it's like 10 times a little bit harder. I'm not saying the one who's in Lagos is having it any easier.
Easy, yeah.
So when it comes to challenges, what I've found from talking to investors, other ecosystem supporters and entrepreneurs, of course, is that we have a uniform set of problems. It's just the magnitude that differs usually. But when it comes to Uganda in particular, for me, what stands out really is the quality of the founders. That I feel like it has been a big issue. And then also the quality of the supporters, and by supporters in terms of mentors, in terms of investors, as well as organizations and these are usually well-meaning. But the challenge is that they are also learning how to support entrepreneurs. you know.
Okay.
So it's like you're supporting someone as you get to learn, and it's been a big challenge. The only advantage that, or positive that for me I've been able to pick, is that if you compare us to 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there has been tremendous progress that has been made. You're seeing now a sense of maturity in how entrepreneurs approach problems. Someone is building from the onset the same way. I like the fact that I think someone pointed and said, we need to start building for the world, right? So now an entrepreneur is asking, how do I build, problems that are going to be on a very, very huge scale? Am I just building for the continent, or the developing world, or for the globe? As simple as that. So we're seeing that sense of maturity in the market. And then also when it comes to those that are supporting, for example, last year you saw that, you had Go Ventures give money to Safe Border, you had Alliance X coming. So now you're starting to see people that are giving you money not on the grounds of it being a grant, which really I think had been and still is a big way for people to raise money here. I don't think I have anything bad against grant money. I just think it's good for certain purposes, but if it's the only mode of investment you're having, then you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot. You need to diversify in capital that has experience, capital that has relevant advice and mentorship.
Okay, great. So you talked about players, showing workings, because at the end of the day, no matter what conversation we have about capital, at the end of the day, investors are thinking about, is this viable? How do I get returns? Am I going to get returns? Is this a feasible place to put my money in? Recently, we saw the acquisition, the MFS Africa and Bionic, acquisition. So for those that are not, up to speed, so MFS Africa acquired Bionic in a 100% cash and share deal. And yes, and this is Ugandan based. What do you think this means for the ecosystem as a whole? What do you think the ripple effect is going to be from funding and everything? What do you think it means generally?
I mean, I feel like that's a positive for the market, because as someone who would want to see Africa, but more importantly, Uganda win, not just on a local or continental, but global stage, I think it's an interesting development for us. I think that's really, I've not had time to talk to the team at Bionic really, to understand exactly how this might be, but from what I read in the press release, it really painted a very, very good picture of the market, in that usually companies acquire other companies to solve their problems. Right. So I don't want to expand in and integrate in Nairobi, in Lagos, Kigali, who has done this, right? So that would be one of the ways for both either investors and entrepreneurs, and I hope even the policymakers look at it, because it's a win at every level. And for policymakers, and also hoping that I never had interaction with Bionic, is that a policymaker wants to see if you've sold what is in it for us. If it's a let's say cash deal, and I don't know the terms for the options deal. Then for an entrepreneur like me, you want to see really, is there an exit for someone who is like me in this market, and that of course is the same for an investor. So that ripple effect, that it goes back to the thing that I said around solving problems. So the question is, can we solve problems at a scale that is others are willing to say, I don't think I want to come and do this on my own. Let me just acquire so and so that we just go along. Yeah.
No, there's a very important question I want to ask, and it's by virtue of how innovation is and technology generally, it's a thing, it's a trendiness that appeals to younger people. And Africa has a bunch of younger people, millennials, and there are going to be more over the years. How do you think we can bridge the gap, between making this an industry that is only appealing to younger people and a little bit of the older ones, because like most products now are built, targeted at younger people. Most roles are like, and you have like this discrimination where people say, oh, we want young people, we want 20-something-year-olds. But this is a revolutionary industry. This is a sector that we know, or we hope would revolutionize Africa. And it can't be exclusionary. It can't exclude a group of people, age group, or it can be, exclude anybody. So how do you propose from a Ugandan perspective now that, we bridge this link between age for now?
I mean, the thing is, which is a sad thing, technology went mainstream, several decades ago, and countries that have really looked at that, they've gone beyond just saying, okay, this is technology, and they say, how do we position ourselves for the next, industrial revolution? And they're building that infrastructure, right?
Okay.
And it's really, really sad that for us, again, we are still debating how do we interest, everyone else, and not debating it from a national point of view or from us having people that can really impact how capital is deployed on a local level, but it's really from peer conversation on the private sector side of things. So one of the things that I think is, how do we get capital that aligns with the national's interest? I'm not saying the capital we are getting doesn't, but the capital we are getting has its limitations, because if I'm Square Capital and I'm giving money to a Nigerian company, it has to align with my interests. And usually they may not necessarily align with the interests of Nigeria, right?
Okay.
So how do you get Nigeria to say, you know what, I think, or Uganda, and say, how do we align with the national development plan for the next 50 years, right?
Okay.
So now the country says, maybe we have $50 billion. It's right here, right? We are going to do this ABCD, and it's really patient capital, or it's infrastructure kind of capital that, you're investing in something that might not pay off in terms of, oh, it's an exit, but it's laying the groundwork. Like, for example, right now, if you're going to change the curriculum, right? That is work that an entrepreneur like me or you might not really be able to do and get an exit for Sequoia Capital. You can't. Right. But if you did that, if a country did that, if a continent did that, you see the ripple effects in terms of the quality of founders, the quality of employees that you're having, not just on a national level, but on a continental and global level. So most of the things, I really feel like they are foundational things, that whatever we are doing right now is not bad, but sort of us, we are doing things that they are secondary to the real problems that we might, I think, want to address as a continent. We cannot continue burying our heads in the sand. There is a friend of mine here in Kampala is doing something that maybe you could use CC Hub and iHub as references. And I think he's doing a good work. He's done one of the company is called Innovation Village, for those that might be interested. And what he has done, he has built something that is from the ground up. It's not a co-working space. It has an angel network. It has a fund that is an early stage fund. Actually, this year I think they are funding close to 10 startups, giving them ticket sizes of beyond, I think, between 10K to 50K. And then he's been able to lobby with the government. He's been able to build how can I make a space that is grand, that brings together small businesses that might not have channels of selling to consumers and businesses. He's doing this not just in Kampala. He's doing this across 4 other centers in Uganda's biggest regions. So we need to go back, but this kind of work might not produce an exit that, let's say, most of the VC firms are looking for. So if we want to, I think, do the things to the scale that you asked, we need to do the foundational work, and it's painful work, and it's not as glamorous. And I'm not saying that everything else is glamorous, but this kind of work is very, very dirty.
It's not sexy at all, yeah.
It's very, very dirty work, but that's the kind of work that is going to move us from 0 to 1.
Okay. Now, you just made a point that's going to lead to my last question for this session before we dive into the Q&A. So please, if any of our attendees have questions, please put it in the Q&A section. It's underneath your screen there. Now, my question is something you highlighted now. You talked about, most of the development that needs to happen cannot be funded by VC, which is true, because VCs have funds. They have to talk to their, they are businesses too, they want exits and whatnot. Which brings me to the conversation of funding structures. Now, there are a lot of funding structures for innovation and startup. There is VC money, there is grants, which you mentioned earlier, there is family and friends. And nowadays we are seeing a lot of money is coming into Africa that is, that doesn't follow the, popular VC funding structure. For Uganda, what do you think is okay, what do you think about funding structure for Uganda? Let me not ask any kind of leading question, from all these available VCs, government, what do you generally think about the ecosystem and funding structure? What works and what does not?
I mean, because like you mentioned, funding comes in different formats. And unfortunately, we've been, you could say, I would think I'll go with, unlucky, to have mostly grant funding. It's especially for certain kind of projects, but it has its own limitations. Just like, of course, venture capital has its own limitations. If you only have venture capital, there are some projects that never come to life because they are not attractive to that kind of capital. Similarly, if you're deploying grants capital or funding to solutions that demand venture capital, you're not going to get to the certain level that you want to be. So we have mostly that. And what I don't like is their small ticket sizes. That's number one. And then number two, usually your metrics, if you're a growth-focused company, are not aligned with their metrics. Usually, for them, they are comfortable for you just writing a 200-page, report telling them what you've achieved, and they're not really going to. And their feedback is not coming from a point of we've done this, we've mentored, entrepreneurs that are, growth-focused, or this is our track record. Usually, for them, it's a little bit of CSR. And that's it. And now with venture capital, which is my ideal, especially with the type of people that we are talking to, it's really, really lacking. It's lacking in terms of the ticket sizes and in terms of presence, because an entrepreneur who is in Kampala that wants to raise $1 million, let me start with $100,000, right? They would have to fly out of the country, which I think is sad. You don't need to really fly out for that ticket size. You should be able to just leave your computer, go for a meeting at a nearby cafe, you close the deal, and then get back to working. So we really are in need of accelerators that can come in and say, you know what, I think we can write between 10 to maybe 200K or 100K, and this is money that's available. So we are lacking in that sense. My friend that I told you at the Innovation Village and the 97 Fund, they are trying to address that challenge. But with capital, the more the better. I think you want to have as many more in the market as possible.
Mixed models.
Exactly. So entrepreneurs, number one, you feel like you have options. So you don't feel like you have to take harsh terms. And necessarily, you know that if I'm taking these terms, they are the best. And I think you look at this at Lagos and Cape Town. You're having a couple of people launching. There is a lady that I was talking to, I think, early this week. She's breaking away from a VC firm. She's launching her own. So that's what we need. That's what we want to have. That's what we want to have across the continent. But more importantly for me, across Uganda, you want to have people coming here and writing these checks. The other element necessary, especially for exits, because these are usually patient kind of people. They can come in and buy you out, and they can hold on a little bit longer. Even people in private equity kind of structures, like I think I'm forgetting this Tunisian private equity firm that was launching in another fund. I'm forgetting the name. But when you look at what they are focused on is that they can allow someone who has come in let's say Series A, Series B to exit eventually. But I feel like, that would be a longer stretch for us, because if you're still looking at how do I set the challenge of 100K, $500,000, $1 million, $5 million, then that would be a longer stretch for us to ask for. So I feel like the core that we need to focus on are accelerators, and then also VC firms. Okay.
Like I said, we can go on and on and on, but we have questions in the Q&A, and I'm just going to read them out to you. So Ralph Otto wants to know, he says, does Uganda have the infrastructure to facilitate hitch-free last-mile delivery?
I think I'm struggling to understand what he or she means with hitch-free. But this is how I'll try to rationalize it, right? What I'm getting is that he's trying to sort of mean that you don't have to incur costs when you're delivering this.
Okay.
I don't know, but I'm going to try and answer it from that angle, because it was for me maybe to get in touch with Ralph and then he can clarify.
Okay, where's Ralph? Ralph, Would Ralph like to ask this question live? Hi, Ralph. Okay, we'll get back to him in a bit.
Okay. All
okay,
right.
so Sam Tebandeke, I hope I'm getting these names correctly, wants to know, so it says you're involved in transports, but what's your feeling about property tech and the future of real estate sector in technology?
I mean, honestly, whatever I'm going to throw out there will be just sort of an industry feeling kind of guess, not an industry specific guess. I keep on, like, just this year I switched and I was looking for another apartment.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most horrible experiences you're going to have. So you essentially have to pay close to $50 to $100 in fees to brokers, just looking for a property, And this is from someone who is doing it at, consumer point of view. Now, I imagine those that are looking for a commercial property, what they go through and how much they have to pay. So I think someone can streamline that process in that I don't need to hustle looking for the property. And usually there's so much fraud, not in a financial sense, but in the sense of someone may make you think they have the properties and you pay the money and they don't have it. Or they will tell you that you tell them your specifications of the property you want, and they will deliberately take you to a property that you don't want. You understand?
Okay.
Yeah, so I honestly think there is space. Now, the question is, are there so many people like me that would be willing to pay for such a solution? That is, I think, up to you as an entrepreneur to go ahead and do your research.
Yeah, so this is a market size conversation, market research, market size. Good. So I want Sam to ask his question live now. Please unmute Sam. Hi, Sam. Hello, Sam.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Malinzi. How are you? Thank you for the session. No, the reason why I ask is because I recently got conned while looking for a house. I totally do not like house hunting. It's the worst experience, like you said.
Yeah.
And so I recently got conned because I went to a particular popular website that was listing properties. And one of the challenges is that there's a small fine print that you don't see. I wouldn't have seen until I'd gotten conned. So they say that the property that's listed is not verified by our website, and which really made me sad, because as a marketplace, you owe the duty of trust to the client. So one of the things that I hope, I'm in talks with some friends to see if we can kind of do the research you're talking about, and also create a solution where, given, of course, like now we're in COVID, you can't, it's safer not to go to many places, right? How do you create a platform where you have people able to view the properties in their entirety, in the detail that needs, get all the information they need, book the space? So basically what we're trying to create is an Airbnb, or rather we're brainstorming an Airbnb for house hunting. Okay,
I'll answer this from a point of view, because what perhaps I didn't say in my introduction is I worked at Jumia in Uganda, and I was with the classified section, and classifieds had Jumia House, which was Lamudi. So as a head of content, I used to hear conversations from those that were handling the agents, and they were trying to get property developers and managers to come on board. This, and of course, like any other problem that is worth solving, is a complicated problem, and largely because the people that are involved that are trying to solve the problem, they are very informal, which is the agents, and the current model serves them best, so they are not incentivized in any way. And I think those in Nigeria have the element of area boys. So they sort of try also, they gazette their own areas. So the reason I laughed when you said that you're conned is because their model benefits them that way. It's designed in that you have nowhere to complain. I looked for a house, and it's ironic that I'm in technology, but I can't use any available platforms. So I had to go through the traditional element of, I know I'm going to be conned, but let me try my luck until I get the house. So it's a pain point that if you talk to the people that are looking for houses, they'll come on board, they want it. But the other party, because this is sort of a marketplace, and a marketplace has either two or more sides, and all of them have to have buy-in. So the key people here is the agents, those guys that are going to that, either going to lead to the landlords or property managers. Now, how do you either get them on board or remove them from the equation? I feel like that's the most important thing.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, thank you very much with that. Right to the next question. So George Nyajui wants to know if you could shed light on the lending space in Uganda and if Uganda has adopted technology into simplifying how lending is done. I think this is interesting too.
Yeah, I think lending is a broad statement because, but I'll try to break it down because there is SME lending. I know there are people that are focused in that space. There's
payday loan.
Lending is a very, very broad space. But from what I've had with conversations, those in the space, I feel like there is too much lacking. And it could be because when you look at the scale of what has been accomplished in Uganda and Kenya, there is really, really a big difference. And I haven't dug in, but I would post that it's perhaps when it comes to what M-Pesa has allowed so many to do, and that is for like this micro-lending, the micro-lending. M-Pesa allowed so many people, I think, to do so much with that, to access their money, because it's really, really inefficient to do it, in person. And also the cost, I feel like, and M-Pesa, I think they had the infrastructure, they had the first mover advantage. Now here, we are having MTN just open up to other people who want to do that. With MTN mobile money, same thing. I don't think Airtel has made much progress because these are the two biggest mobile money providers. When it comes to SME lending, what we've had mostly has been asset financing, which I think has taken off. So it's still lending, but we stuck to an asset, which is, I know you want a boda, so I can give it to you, and then you pay back. There's a particular company which I think has raised over $20 million, but in debt. It's called Tugende, that does boda. Last time I spoke to the founder, he told me they wanted to also do cabs, and they wanted to expand into South Sudan, and I think also Rwanda and a couple of other countries. So lending for me, it's really, really, it's a mixture of so many things. So I wish you'd have been a little bit more specific.
So this you just mentioned is like a hire purchase model, right?
Yeah.
Of owning assets for businesses. That's interesting. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So Nakunda wants to know that if, like, hi Nakunda. So I know Nakunda. Nakunda wants to know to what extent donor funds distort the market, given the priority is often, on perspective of donor governments.
How much? I think I would say it's not my liking.
Okay, hold on. So there was a question leading up to this. You know what? I'm going to just unmute Nakunda to ask her question live.
Okay.
Hi, Nakunda. Hello.
Hi, Victor.
Yes, please ask.
Hi, Malinzi. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. I think you were actually answering some of my questions even as I was typing it. But my first one was really to do with government investment and the extent to which government actually invests in the tech sector beyond, creating infrastructure or whatever. And then my follow-on was because quite often the donor community in Africa, certainly, and in East Africa particularly, is almost like a side government. So, and the donors do invest in tech, and that's become a very trendy thing for the donor community. But obviously, much of their priority, as always, is whatever their government priorities are, vis-a-vis their relationship with that country. And so I can only assume that there can be a distortion in the market when products are being invested in simply because they tick a box in the UK or in the US, but not necessarily in Uganda or Nigeria or South Africa. So that was my question. I know it's probably difficult to measure, but to what extent have you seen any sort of trends?
Yeah, I think whatever extent is not my liking, and this is in, I can say, two ways. Number one, the intentions, and then number two, the amount of money. The intentions, I feel like it's not something that is geared to convert towards something tangible. It's more of, either CSR for the government, ironically, because we have a very young population, and usually if you have so many young people involved in something, you want to have a positive image in that area. So you're not necessarily investing because you say, okay, we shall achieve maybe 1 million people employed in the next 10, 20 years, or we shall achieve so much contribution towards our GDP. It's more of how can we clean our image in this regard. And even when they're doing so, I feel like the amounts they are putting there are laughable. They could be 1,100 times bigger, and just because they are the government, you know. So that would be my response here.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
All right. Thank you, Malinzi. Our next question is, how can you export tech solutions from Uganda to other countries, and if there are plans for you to expand beyond Uganda?
I was born in Uganda, but I've always thought about myself as someone who can do something on the global stage. And of course, we have to admit, if I want to do something on a global stage and I'm based in Kampala and you're based in San Francisco, the structures don't allow both of us to, advance at the same pace. If you're in San Francisco, the regulation, the capital, your network there's a way it sort of propels you forward. For me, naturally, it pulls me back. One interesting thing that someone mentioned was around payments. Right now, however much advancement we've made, if I wanted to move or to get paid, and my business is in Kampala and Victor's business is paying me from Lagos, I'm going to lose so much money, lose so much time and all that. When it comes to the issue of expanding beyond Kampala, maybe what I'll clarify is with Digest Africa, I left Digest Africa last year, and really our focus was the continent from the get-go. And so there was not need, because our business would just start covering anywhere, just the way we are right now talking with Victor. So I think there was no need for us to expand beyond Uganda. We're already on the continental stage. Then with AWA, I'm the country manager for Uganda, but the company is already operational in Tanzania and Cameroon, and I think we should be operational in a couple of other countries. So by default, it's supposed to address not just actually Africa, but transportation issues in emerging markets. Because when you look at what we have here, the inadequacy in terms of infrastructure and other things, and you look at India and you look at other countries, these challenges are there, right? That's why when it came to the question of similarity in terms of technology, if you have a technological solution in Kampala, chances are the same problem is there in Lagos. What usually might differ is the culture around execution, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Malinzi. So Jenny Liang wants to know the challenges for local and international investors to scout early stage deals in Uganda. And she also wants to know what problems are facing local entrepreneurs to make it what challenges do local and international investors have accessing early stage deals in Uganda, and what do you think the problems are for entrepreneurs to access early stage VC funding and angel investing?
Let me just try to get you asking the challenges that early stage investors face in Uganda.
Yes, to make them fundable.
Can you repeat that? Is the question geared towards entrepreneurs, or is it a two-in-one question?
Yes, a two-in-one question. So the first one is, what are the challenges? Like, what challenges do international investors have scouting early stage deals? Then the second part is, how do startups make themselves fundable?
Okay. I think all these questions have the same answer, which goes back what I said. Usually, as an investor, you want to have a pool of great entrepreneurs. Okay. And that makes your work easy. So it means that if I came to Kampala, if I invested money in a trip, or I call out for entrepreneurs, out of, let's say, 100 people that are sending me, I'm going to have, let's say, at least 10% that fall within my investment criteria, right? Okay. So I feel like that pool is not big enough, and the pool, I don't mean the one of entrepreneurs, I mean the pool of entrepreneurs that are worthy investing in. And this sounds painful, but I think it's the same thing to us as entrepreneurs who are looking for money, because if you're in a market like Uganda, let's face it, usually the person has a lot of reasons not to give you money. So I'll give a simple analogy. One of our sort of infamous presidents is called Idi Amin, and when
we all know him.
Yeah. So when our boxing team was going for the Olympics, they told him that they were being unfairly judged, and he said, "Knock them out. That way they won't be unfair." So I feel like if you're an entrepreneur and you're in a market like Kampala, you want to knock out the investor. Like, you come on the table when you've done enough research about them, you've done enough research about your problem, You've built a team that you think you're confident about. You've even piloted the solution. You think you're getting significant traction. You've educated yourself as much as you can. I know it's already hard for you as an entrepreneur, but you're competing not because this guy's capital is not going in Uganda alone. It's not like they told them, go and invest in Kampala. No, the LPs give you money and you're looking for entrepreneurs across the continent, and you're competing with someone in Cape Town, Nairobi, Lagos. And to them, they have a positive attitude towards some of these markets. So you just need to do that. That's my thinking.
Okay. So Jean-Claude wants to know where they can find information about licensing for requirements and procedure for payment processors and electronic issuers in Uganda.
I think the beauty with that is, like I mentioned earlier, when we have an association that brings together people in the payments and finance and all that, but those that are in technology space. So I think I can just give them an introduction to the association leadership, and I think they can handle the more specific questions. My email is kisahda@gmail.com. You can just send me an email and then I can make an introduction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, one final question. Okay, I think we have people like raising their hands to ask questions live, and I want to allow 2 people.
Okay.
Yes, we have Cynthia. Hi, Cynthia. I'm just going to unmute you now and allow you to ask your question. Okay. While we wait for Cynthia, there is Jarvis. Hi, Jarvis.
How are you doing?
Yes, hi. Welcome.
How are you, Jarvis?
Good to see you. I have a question. I work with a non-profit. We have about 200 employees across 6 African countries, and I'm the director of communications.
Yeah.
So the 4 months have been really tough because we needed to shift our operations digitally.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what advice, this organization is about 32 years.
Yeah.
This type of came as a surprise, but we needed to get our stuff, and I've been leading the campaign on digital, pivoting around digital.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to such an organization? What things would you encourage me to focus on to increase our efficiency and online productivity? Thank you.
Okay. I think this is sort of a standard thing that I would recommend anyone. I've just had you speak for 30 seconds, so I can't really recommend something that is concrete. But what I would say is, I'm sure you have peers in your industry, so you can really benchmark on what they are doing. And I'm sure you have some people that you can talk to in your industry. So I think for me, that would be the take. Me giving you something that is specific, I don't think that is possible.
Okay. So Jean-Claude is asking you drop your email in the chat section, and I think maybe you should do that too for Jarvis.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Any other question?
No, none for now. None for now. Any final thoughts on this conversation? What do you see as the way forward? I mean, Uganda has a growing tech ecosystem, as most of Africa, to be fair. What do you see as the future? What industries do you see? What sectors do you see? Taking over. How do you think about it generally?
Yeah, I mean, I love my country. I love the tech sector here, and I would want to contribute towards its growth as much as I can. And what I would say is, if you look at Uganda from the lens of South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria, it looks really not advanced. But if you look at it from the fact that where it was 10 years ago, where it was 5 years ago, and where it is, then all of a sudden you start seeing the potential, which is that in spite of everything that is going on around you, like this is the resilience that you're seeing. And for me, the more important positive is the mentality around the entrepreneurs and those that are looking to fund these entrepreneurs. You're seeing the majority, coming in this. When it comes to the industries, I could be biased, but for me, this is my favorite. There is a company here that is a little bit of Soko Watch, which is building, I would say, building solutions for small businesses in that I don't know if I'm putting it the right way, but helping small businesses get their orders fulfilled without having, and I think they are primed to build out tools that can even help small businesses sell, because if you figured out this element, then you can figure out the other way around. And it's interesting for me because there are so many small businesses that are right now just trying to come online for their very first time, because they've realized that actually there is another way around. Before you wouldn't get the attention. So that is what is exciting for me. Then the other element, of course, is I think fulfillment, because beyond just small businesses being there, I feel like we are going to get to a level whereby I don't need to have a rental space. I just need to rent a partition of a warehouse or a fulfillment center, and I can have sort of virtual inventory. I don't need to have it myself. So if someone is doing logistics for me, and all I have to do is accept orders and I fulfill them, so I can order things and I store them in that warehouse, and then I just coordinate things. You understand? Yeah. So you can run a small business from anywhere without having to be present, without having to incur rental incomes, having to hire people. All you have to do is learn how this business works, and then you do that. So I feel like that's another space. From just someone doing logistics, they will start renting out warehouses and they sell small spaces to small businesses.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. I generally like your outlook. I mean, like you said, maybe it's because bias. You love your country, which is a very great thing.
Yeah.
But like finally, I want to know. There are a lot of there are a lot of predicators, there are a lot of success indicators. There are some things, there are infrastructures that mean that tech and innovation will take off, will thrive, and you have payments, and on a very fundamental level, you have internet, internet penetration, you have mobile penetration, How do you see the development of this predicator? So I'm thinking about payments, I'm thinking about mobile infrastructure, I'm thinking about internet, broadband connectivity, I'm thinking about even funding, getting funding for innovators, building stuff. How do you see the success predicators developing over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
You're asking what I see as success predictors?
Yes. Okay.
I mean, I'm a fundamentalist. I like approaching life and building anything from the first principles. And I think one of the trends I'm not liking is incremental innovation. We're not short of problems.
Okay.
We have problems, but these problems require sort of missionary entrepreneurs.
Okay.
If you're in this market for 5 years, you're not building something significant. You can do that for other mature markets whereby there's a small, tiny problem of how people want to interact with their friends, and you feel that, and then you exit in those 5 years. We're in a market, for me, I think, that is requiring fundamental, like we need to overhaul some of the legacy infrastructure, or we need to build the non-existent infrastructure so that we lay a firm foundation for the future. For example, right now, I pay roughly, I would say, if I want unlimited internet that is really, really good, I'm going to pay close to $80 or $85 per month, right? Okay. And that is really, really expensive. It's very, very expensive. So if you were in a market that you want people to adopt this, then the infrastructure that needs to drop this pricing, you need to bring it down. If I'm trying to do e-commerce and logistics, and I have a delivery driver that cannot do 10 trips a day delivering things, and even 10, they're not at full potential, but at least you would really, really break even, and they're doing only 3 to 5 trips because the road infrastructure is not good. They're spending time in traffic jam. The address system is poor, or you have to incur an additional cost of them having to make calls. So there's so much foundational infrastructure that we need to address for us to say now, okay, incremental innovation is now welcome. I'm not saying it's bad to have incremental innovation, because building foundational infrastructure takes us to a table that has to involve the government, involve government agencies, involve other governments and private corporations. So you have to have the willpower to withstand that kind of headache, to build it.
Okay. That's really interesting. So I'm going to talk about something like we mentioned when we started, and I mean, I keep saying final thoughts, but there is a lot of foundational infrastructure that we can't leapfrog, and then we have this bottleneck of trying to get the government on board, having them not fully understand what's going on. And how do you see this playing out? Like, I mean, the biggest for me is internet, broadband connectivity. If that does not exist, there is a lot of hitch to tech and innovation. So most of these things that are hard or impossible to leapfrog, how do you see them playing out, in the next 5 to 10 years? How do you see like getting the government on board these things?
Yeah, I mean, there is an alternative, because I think by default we assume that we are supposed to go forward. No, if you don't address some concerns, even at an individual level, you crash, end up dying, right?
Okay.
So we're in a world that is truly globalized to compete with you, even if 2,000 miles away, right? So what you're going to see is that if I'm in Kampala and I have, let's say, I bought my BMW and I can't drive it here, I'm going to move to a city where I can drive it. So it means that my country is losing out on that front. If I'm a company here and the tax laws are not are not friendly for me, I'm going to incorporate my company in Delaware, right? So you just become sort of a pit that everyone just draws from but never puts back into, and eventually you're going to have nothing to give back, and you lose out in that race. So I think, yes, countries or governments might ignore this in the short run, but it's going to come back later on, and you'll be in a position whereby you don't have any political or economic leverage over other countries. You have to do what they say you have to do. So if you launch a company, either your government has to allow it to operate, or they have no other option. So you're dancing to each and everyone's tune. So this is really, it goes beyond just technology and goes to a level of, if you're an independent country, you want to have a level of sovereignty whereby you have control over the decisions that you make, and you can't make decisions if you can't have that economic leverage, So I think that then, I also want to touch it a bit briefly on us ignoring the critical infrastructure. You cannot sell to people forever. Usually trade is two-way. You give and you take. You can't just keep on taking and taking. It won't make, even if you're building a solution but you're leapfrogging, let's say, critical infrastructure, and you're using drones to deliver blood in an area. Yes, you can do that as an emergency, but if it's really a business that is sustainable in the long run, you cannot just keep on taking away without fostering a kind of relationship, which is, yes, these people, they have something they sell to the rest of the world, and then in return, they buy something, because the reason that's why you're using a drone is because my roads are so poor that you can't bring anything, or I can't take anything out. So maybe if you're fostering something which says these drones are taking blood, they will come back with coffee. So how do you transport coffee on a drone? You understand?
Yeah.
So these are critical conversations I think we need to have.
Yeah. I mean, there is so much that can happen off the back of like literally trying to like leapfrog very basic infrastructure. And so YJ asked a question that I was just going to get to, and it's like intellectual flights, is a drain on many countries. And like you rightly mentioned, it's very important and pertinent for the government to get these people to stay, And I'm going to add capital flight to that conversation too, like what schemes and incentives are in place to attract these people and keep them, How do we build it out? Like if you were to advise a government, what do we need to do on our end exactly?
Yeah, I mean, we need to take a longer term point of view, because governments are acting like, like when you're a kid, you can have so many interests within a day. You can want to be a pilot, a doctor, all this. So I feel like our governments are acting the same way, which is they might want to go this direction, the other direction tomorrow. Then no, you don't have that kind of freedom, Right. If you're government, I feel like we need to take a longer term point of view of how do we plan for the next 50 to 100 years. Yeah. One interesting thing that I like about what Jack Ma keeps on saying, and I don't care if they do it or not, but he emphasizes the fact that they are looking at how do they build a company for the next 200 years, 99 years. So if you're doing that, if you're having that kind of a longer term approach, then making sacrifices right now makes sense. We are focused on short-term comfort, and ideally it's a zero-sum game in the end. So if we can say as a continent, because even if you build something in isolation of your neighbors, it's going to come back and bite you. You're going to have people moving from their country coming to yours. I feel like the beauty with Europe is that they manage to trade with each other as neighbors and, you know, rising together. You understand? So here, even if you're Rwanda and you're building this infrastructure, you need to trade with your neighbors, because usually you trade with your neighbors immediately. So if you can take a collective longer term point of view of saying, this is the path. So at the African Union level, AFDB level, World Bank level, but even now regional level, ECOWAS, you know, East African Community, and then now national level, this is where we are headed, you know, and we know the sacrifices we have to make to get there, but we are willing to make these sacrifices. These are our priorities. We need to work on the education. We need to work on the core infrastructure. We need to work on adding value to our core products. You know, maybe adding value to human resource, which is, we have a very huge population that is young. You know, let's do this. So I feel like we cannot leapfrog our way out of the hard work. We need to do the hard work.
That's very key. That's very key. For our participants, we have a survey. We have a Google Doc link in the chat section. Please fill that and let us know what you think about our event and how to make it better. But yes, thank you very much, Malinzi. Really appreciate you coming here, and it's been a really interesting conversation. One I think we should continue.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. And for everybody here, please subscribe to our newsletters. So we have newsletters, and just check out TechCabal.com. We'll try as much as we can to cover Africa. You know, Africa is really huge when you think about it. Africa is really huge, but we do a lot of work to bring players across the board together. But thank you very much, Malinzi. This has been a really interesting conversation. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today. Do have a nice day.
All right.